Now with that, I changed my mind. Let's go ahead and make a third sauce variant. Now today's recipe is going to be kind of made up as we go. Reason being is I was actually in a grocery store today picking up stuff I need for the week, and I saw red habaneros that they had in stock. Normally you can find the orange habaneros all year long, but I rarely see the red habaneros, so I went ahead and I picked up a pound of those. The other reason that I'm just going to go ahead and make the recipe today instead of trying to come up with something is these habaneros look like they're kind of getting on the end of their life. Still decent looking and everything else, but the stems and everything are kind of getting dark. Probably shipped from a southern state or Mexico or something like that to get in. So they've had the travel time and everything else. So I want to go ahead and use these up ASAP. And what I want to do, since I'm not quite sure exactly what kind of flavor profile I want, is I am going to do a quick fermentation. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and use the peppers, some garlic, some onion, and that is going to be it. So let's prepare our vegetables and peppers. Okay, to start the fermentation and everything, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and weigh out our items so I can get the right 2% mixture for our salt. So I'm going to go ahead and get a scale here. I'm going to turn that on and make sure I'm set to grams. I'm going to put on my bowl, and then I'm going to write down exactly the weight. So that is 215 grams. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and set this off to the side. And that way I can take out the weight of the bowl on the weight of the actual vegetables that we're using here. So let's go ahead and start prepping. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the habaneros. Now, one thing you want to do is, first of all, when you're cutting up hot peppers, is go ahead and wear gloves. The second thing to do, especially when you're getting peppers kind of a little bit on the edge of their life, when you cut it open, you'll see some black stuff on the actual peppers there, just where they've actually started rotting and getting old. You can kind of cut that out if you want to, but I really don't play with that in a fermentation, and I go ahead and just toss out the whole pepper. So let's go ahead and we'll finish cutting these up. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rough chop half of this yellow onion here. Lastly, I'm going to put in garlic. I have roughly 10 cloves here of garlic. So we're going to go ahead and put that in also. Now, once that we got everything into the bowl, I'm going to set my scale on here, make sure it's zeroed out on grams. I'm going to set the bowl and everything on here. This should give me a weight, which is 748. All right. Do a little math here and we'll calculate out our salt. Now that we have our peppers, onions, and garlic weighed, 2% of that total weight comes out to 10.6 grams. So what we're going to do is now measure out the salt for that 2%. I'm going to go ahead and grams, zero this out. I'm going to get this salt and then weigh out 10.6 grams. Okay, I actually have 11 grams of salt, but that is not a problem. So typically when you're doing a brine, you can go anywhere from 2% to 5%. I don't care for my stuff as salty, so I kind of keep it at a 2%. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to set this off to the side. We're going to get our blender. And I'm going to start loading in the vegetables into the blender. All right. I'm going to go ahead and add the salt. Then we just got to grab our lid. And I don't know where I got my lid, so be right back. Okay. So I located the lid. Let's go ahead and we'll put it on here. And we're going to go ahead and start getting this chopped down. I don't want to chop this ultra fine. I still want this somewhat chunky. Not too chunky, but not overly pureed either. So let's go ahead and chop this up just a little bit more. Now this is what the peppers actually look like once they're chopped up. Like I said, I kind of wanted them still a little bit chunky, but not as a puree. So this is kind of what you want to be looking for when you do chop this up for your mash. Okay. And through the magic of YouTube, we are back and our mash is in our jar. At least what some people call magic, I call not hitting the record button through the last process. But hey, what you gonna do? But at this point, what I did is I put the mash in the jar, cleaned up my mess, and then I went ahead and I took a paper towel and I wiped around the inside and also the lid to make sure I didn't have anything sitting up. Now on a fermentation, traditionally I really like it having to be a little bit fuller in this jar, but since we're going to be doing a quick one, I'm going to be stirring this up every couple days and opening it, so it's not going to really matter. So we're going to go ahead, at this point we're going to put on our lid. I've already put in the rubber grommet. Okay, I say I already put on the rubber grommet in the center, but I didn't put the one around the edge on the inside. That would usually help. All right, so let's go ahead, we'll get this in here, we'll get this sealed. We have our bubbler, we're gonna put that in here. Okay, and that's in there. And then I'm gonna make just a simple brine to put inside the bubbler here. A little salt in the water. Put the piece in there. Now every bubbler is different, so fill yours the way that you have or what it's supposed to be filled. But on mine, I just fill this up to the line with a salt brine. And I'm gonna put the lid on it, okay? And then I'm gonna be back every couple of days. We're gonna stir this up and then we're gonna turn this into something. So we'll be back then. Okay. Now, my quick habanero fermentation turned into a 4-week process. My initial plan was to actually do this within a week, but unfortunately, life happens. The good thing is when you do your fermentation properly, your setup and everything in here, and all your utensils and everything are sterilized, then it can actually go a little bit longer without any kind of problem. I just went through every once in a while, double checked my water level up here into the bubbler to make sure everything was good there. Other than that, this fermentation has been doing well. Now, the only difference in between doing like a week fermentation, I'm sorry, not a week, but a fermentation for a week is you don't get as much of the funky flavors. It's not really funky, but you kind of get more of, yeah, it's kind of a funky kind of mellower type flavor. I don't know, I'm not describing it too well, but it does definitely have a more of a flavor to it that you can tell it is a fermentation. Now, the longer that the fermentation goes, usually for me, the taste and stuff like that gets a little bit stronger, depending on the type of pepper and what other ingredients that I ferment with it. But it's actually really, really good. It makes for a more complex flavor and a big difference in the sauces that you actually make from a fresh one, one that's 1 week old, and one that's a month or 2 months old that's been fermenting. So gives you a lot of variety in what you do. But today we're gonna go ahead and turn this into a sauce. We're gonna go take it out of the container, put it in the blender, blend it up, add some vinegar, and see how it's gonna go. Ooh, that smells really good. You can smell the habaneros and the onions and the garlic. So let's go ahead and get this in the blender here. Now with this, I want to go ahead and I want to add some vinegar in here because we've done nothing besides the peppers, onions, and the garlic and the salt from the fermentation. So I have here 1 cup of apple cider vinegar. I'm going to go ahead and pour this in here slowly. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to use a whole cup, but I'm going to try to get an idea. So I'm not quite sure how thick or I want to actually make this. So that's the fun thing. If you're not quite sure, your quantities that you used when you made your fermentation or anything like that. You can kind of make it up as you go, get a general idea of what you want to do. So at this point I've used about 3/4 of a cup of apple cider vinegar. We're going to go ahead and blend it up. And see how this looks here in a moment. Okay, at this point it has been blending for just a little bit over 30 seconds. I want to go ahead and take the lid off here. It is still a little bit chunkier than what I want. Not chunkier, but a little bit thicker. And I want to go ahead and give it a taste. To do two things. First of all, to make sure it tastes good. Second of all is because I do want to thin it out more. Do I want to thin it out with vinegar or do I want to thin it out with some water? I don't know until I taste it, and if it has a strong vinegar taste, then we'll thin it out with a little bit of vinegar. But let's go ahead and give it a taste here. Very strong onion, very strong garlic. You get the habanero flavor. Comes across very, very hot. So good. I think at this particular point, I'm not going to actually add any more vinegar. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add just maybe about a half cup of water, not much. So add that in here. Yeah, give or take. Now let's go ahead and blend it up here, and that should get this taken care of. Now we got that blended up. I let that blend for roughly about a minute. And let's open it up and let's do a final taste and a check of its consistency. Kind of made a mess with my hand and everything. Okay. Let's go ahead, make a taste final here. Now the consistency on this is nice and smooth. I can still see a little couple chunks of seeds, but that is good. Let's go ahead and give this one a taste here. Yeah, very, very good. It's a straight habanero garlic onion sauce with the onion and the garlic very strong in it. So the heat, since we used, I believe a pound, yeah, it was a pound of red habanero peppers. So it got a concentrated habanero taste on it. Really, really nice. It gives you that habanero burn, top of the tongue, everything around, but the flavor and the taste, very, very nice. It has a definite fermented, complex taste to it. So very, very nice. But let's go ahead, let's do a bottle here. And what I want to do, get everything I need, is I'm going to make a bottle of this here. And then after that, we're going to add flavors to the rest of it. So, and this is a nice way of making a couple sauces at the same time. Now you actually have that bottled as your first sauce, and it's really nice is because of the fermentation and also the vinegar in here, this thing is shelf stable. I'm not going to test the pH or anything right at the moment, but if the shelf stability is a concern for you, go ahead, just put it in the refrigerator, keep it in the refrigerator. And if it's like my house, this is going to go in the refrigerator just because it's going to be used constantly, and this might last 2 weeks. We go through hot sauces a lot here, so let's go ahead now. What we want to do with the rest of it is we're going to make an additional sauce. When it was blending, I was kind of thinking of a couple flavors I wanted, and I ran upstairs looking to see what kind of fruit and stuff, and I have a couple apples that need to be eaten, so I went ahead and I sliced open one of the apples. It is a Fuji apple, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add apples to this. So we're going to make a completely different flavor sauce. Okay. And you can use any kind of fruit that you want. Fresh fruit, I think, is the best. But if you don't, and you only have a little bit of canned fruit, go ahead and use canned fruit. Canned peaches, canned pineapple, whatever. Kind of just make it your own and see exactly what you got. Now, the nice thing is, if you use the canned fruit, those things are cooked when they go into the can, so you don't have to worry about it trying to start off the fermentation process. If you use fresh fruit like I just did there with the apple, it is going to try to ferment, so once you blend this up, put it in the refrigerator, you're fine. Or you can actually go ahead and cook it for roughly about 20 minutes. Just bring it up to a boil, let it simmer for 20 minutes. That will actually kill off anything that's actually going to try to ferment inside there and feed off the sugars of the apple. And that way, it'll actually last longer that way too. But once again, I'm going to be putting this in the refrigerator and using this thing up quickly. But we'll go ahead and add the apple. Let's blend this up. Then we're going to go ahead and give it a taste. Now we let that blend for another minute. Get the apples and everything infused inside there. So it's really nice. That's why making hot sauces is so easy. Add what you want. Make it up as you go, because this entire thing I made up as I went. I didn't have a recipe to follow, just a general idea. But now the apples did make it just slightly chunkier, but not too terribly much, because apples were very, very moist. So, because they've been sitting for a little bit. But let's go ahead and let's give this one a taste and see how this does. Yeah. I get the apples in here, which is nice. You get the habanero, the garlic, and the onion. So you do get to taste the Fuji apples in here. So completely changes the, excuse me, habanero's getting me just a bit, but it completely adds a completely different flavor to this hot sauce than what we actually did with our original one. And then get the lid on there correctly. Try that again. There we go. But yeah, add what you want. You can add pineapple, peaches, pears, whatever it you want, whatever it you have. So that is a good way to make a sauce. Had to clean off the funnel that I used for my first sauce, but I'll go ahead and we'll bottle up the second sauce here. And like I said, I'll just reiterate, if you are adding fruit and everything to it, it does have a tendency at that point to possibly kick off some more fermentation because of sugars and everything in the fruit. But if you're worried about that, go ahead and at that point put it on the stove, take a boil it for, bring it up to a boil, then go ahead and let it simmer for 20 minutes to kill off any kind of bacteria that's inside of it. That won't feed on the sugars of the fruit that you put in there. But there you go. That gives you a second sauce. So out of one fermentation, I have two sauces here. Great tasting sauce with the apple. And if you really wanted to get different with here, has the apple in there. A couple different things that you can do. You can make yourself a third sauce. Let's go ahead. We can add, I'm not going to do it because I like the apple, but you can add honey. A little bit of nutmeg and cinnamon to go with the apples, kind of sweeten it up, kind of change the flavor just a little bit, and add things that way. So you can take one sauce, change it up every time, and have multiple sauces. But with that, that is going to be it. Okay, now with that, I changed my mind. Let's go ahead and make a third sauce variant of these sauces here. So once again, you can see how easy this is. So what I did is I ran upstairs. I picked up a couple things like I was saying. So we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna start off with some honey. I'm gonna put that in here. How much? I don't know. 2 tablespoons, give or take. Okay, and instead of using cinnamon and nutmeg, I actually have apple pie spice. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put that in here. Once again, I don't know how much. I'm just putting in here what I think looks good. You can adjust it as you go with taste, but honey, apple pie spice. Let's go ahead, put this back on the blender, and we're gonna give it a taste. I let that blend for about 30 seconds on there. Let's go ahead, open this one up. That habanero gets you that habanero gets you every time. You think I'd be smart enough at this point not to stick my face right in it, but yeah, it ain't. But I do smell the cinnamon and everything in here just a little bit when I got that whiff. Let's go ahead and let's taste this other variant. Definitely sweeter. Can't make out the sugar, I'm sorry, can't make out the cinnamon that much, but I can tell the allspice that's in there. Allspice, nutmeg. Yeah. That makes a completely different variant on here too. I still get the apple, the habanero, the onions, and the garlic. So, you know what? I'm gonna save this one here, and we're gonna bottle this one up too. And there you go. With that, you have 3 different sauces, each of them with slight variations, and from 1 fermentation. So, like I say, and what I try to push, because I'm not a chef, I'm not a cook. I'm just baking hot sauces and I enjoy doing it, and hopefully I can show you just how easy it is. Experiment with what you have, use flavors that are around you. Don't necessarily have to go off a recipe, because I clearly haven't. I just have a general idea in my head of what I want to do, but with that, that is it. So hopefully I've helped somebody out there make their own sauce, come up with their own thing. But with that, I hope you enjoyed what you've seen here today. If I can't talk at all, man, I'm sorry. But if you enjoyed what you've seen here today, please, wow. Horrible speech. Please subscribe to the channel. It does help me out greatly. You can also follow me on a bunch of my social medias up here. Plus, you can actually head to my website down below, which is 13peppersbyralph.com. And there I actually sell seeds out of my garden, hopefully to populate those with more seeds when my garden produces this year. Plus, I sell seasonings and spices from there also, from my peppers. So, but with that, once again, I want to say thank you all very much, and you have yourself a very, very good day.